All right, tonight is a reverse angle coming in from the right as opposed to the left. And we're going to take some unprocessed, other than cleaned 223 brass. And here's a couple of cleaned, resized, chamfered, and deburred on previous methods. And we'll set this up, or at least we will try to set it up based on what I read and what I think I understand. So if this is processed brass, we're coming in at 1.755. This one, 1.752. So we're going to call those our control group. And this is coming in at 1.756. It looks like we need to find a biggie. Actually, I probably should resize these. Okay, here's a good one. I thought it was a good one. 5.2. I might end up resizing some of these. Okay, this is coming in at 5. Fuck. It's all over the map with the lip. I think we might be out of luck. I might have to resize. Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and take these. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take those 5. I'll resize them and I'll be back in a minute. All right, I'm hoping this is the final with this particular process. So I've got what I'm going to call 2 pieces of brass that have already had chamfer and deburr. You can see how nice those kind of look. I'm going to call that the control group. Let's mark those. Let's mark those with a dash. So we know those were not done on the Hornady. And we'll just mark these as well. Murphy's Law. All right, so now we have 2 groups. We have a control group coming in at approximately, for what I've previously, let's call this 1.755, 754. Let's just call it 754. This one coming in 755, 1.755. All right, so our other group is 5.9, 6 something, 6.5, 6.0, 6.5. All right, so this one's a biggie. So we'll use this one as our first attempt. And we've got to get this off. And as you have potentially seen between previous segments, I have polished said brass because it was annoying me. And according to the instructions, need to take this off, and I believe this one in the back is how we do that. And that's that. And then the pilot is the center one, if I'm not mistaken. Can't hurt to double check. Pilot is the center. And I believe 223 is pilot number 22. So we will look for pilot number 22. That is pilot 25. Leftover parts. I'm not going to use theirs because I'll use the Dillon. I don't remember why I had that brass there. This is 24. 26. 22. Very tiny. Very, very tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny. All this stuff goes back in. We will use that. And I'll just leave that brass over there. All right, so this is Pilot 22. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. And according to this, there are two and you're supposed to have, probably helps if I loosen this one. I don't know if you can see, that is supposed to hit the shoulder or be level to the shoulder. So I'm going to say that that's close. Let's see what it says. Ensure cutter blades are bottomed out on pilot shoulder. All right, so let's take the pilot shoulder. The pilot is completely bottomed out. I'm going to tighten that. All right, now I'm going to loosen this, and I'm going to see how, actually, I don't think I need to. I'm going to put this against here. I don't know if you can see that, but that looks good. But I think the blades need to actually go into I should probably have gloves on. I know I'm going to get cut. Little pieces. Little tiny pieces. Wow. Fat fingers and tiny pieces. Fudgy, fudgy. Sorry, hitting the camera. All right, so that is bottomed out against the shoulder. Can't get it any closer than that. And it is bottomed out, so I will tighten that. Put this in just to... Okay. And I will do the same for this one. Hopefully this one will not fall Wow. That is really in there. Yeah, I'm going to put a glove on because I can feel that cutting into my hand. I can feel it. Wow, that was really up in there. All right, so that is touching the pilot. And it is bottomed out. Let me throw my glove back in. Actually, let's see what that looks like. Yep, there's the cutter. So it's I don't know if that's really gonna catch the deburr, but we'll find out. We will find out. Trial and error. All right, that's snug. And then they made Hornady made an issue about making sure that this is bottomed out. I'm going to call it snug. Then it talked about putting a piece of brass in. Okay, so we are not at the cutting point, and I'm going to, and it talked about adjusting this and, you know, where you want to be at if you're going to, because if you, they talked about going all the way up here, but then my brass is actually touching the, so I'm going to bring it back to right here because I want the adjustment with everything I've done in terms of adding pads to this front face. I'm about 1/8 of an inch off there. So my idea is to start adjusting okay. Let me do this. Let me adjust this. Let me adjust that all the way out. I'll adjust it at the first break. First break. And now everything is all right. So now that would allow me to start cutting. So now it's trial and error time. Trial and error in the sense that let us put this back together. Fat fingers. Interesting design. I don't know if I like that, but considering how often I would not be adjusting this, I'll live with that. All right, so now we have said adjustment. We'll power it up. And then we'll start checking. What are we going to shoot for? Let's shoot for 752, just for giggles. All right, here we go. All right, so it's clockwise. So it definitely does a nice cut on the outside. I'm not seeing hardly anything on the inside as compared to, yeah, it's kind of like just the opposite here. So what did we cut? We're at 760. So we will cut some more, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5. Yeah, I don't know if I like that approach. All right, so you see it's a lot more pronounced on the face, but not so much my cutting versus the Hornady. And let's bust out the packaging. So it's definitely not looking like this. It's almost like the opposite. The outside too much and the inside too little. Again, let me see where we're at. Yeah, I'm not sure I like the idea of doing this in reverse versus, yeah, I'm not sure which one I like better. Pushing this out or in so that it hits this. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's really trimming that side and not hardly touching the inside. No, I'm not liking that. And that piece of brass is destroyed. Not liking that. No bueno. Okay. What do we got here? 760. Yeah, so I'm not liking how that's you know, I like the action, but I'm not really liking the cut. Not at all. Not at all, to be honest. And you know, this should be like that. And then okay, so that's as low as it will go. So we're going to put that there. I guess, as like anything else, setup is always the bitch. Maybe I'm gonna stand up. Yeah, I'm not liking that. So that's where this should be, right about there. And now no, I'm going the wrong way. Need to come in. There we go. Yeah, I don't like how that looks shitty. So cutting it doesn't seem to be the issue. So we're going to say that that's set. But yeah, I'm not liking that. Yeah, I'm not liking that at all. Might not be a keeper. Not liking that at all. I like too deep on the outside and too shallow on the inside. Too deep, too shallow. Okay, so the outside I'm messing with the pilot again. So the pilot has two little ridges. I'm wondering if they want it to bottom out on Let's see. Nope, it's definitely bottoming out on the top. So they show, yeah, that's essentially correct compared to that. So that looks pretty freaking on it. Yeah, I don't like that. Not liking that. So the fact that the inside is not doing so wonderful. Yeah, this might be a multi-day task. Not liking this. Cutter blades are bottomed out on pilot shoulder. Bottomed out on pilot shoulder. Well, I can't get any more bottomed out than that. All right, so I'm going to adjust my way now. Fuck the instructions. I think that's a little too much. All right, let's see what that does. I think we'll just leave one of these in. Don't need to keep taking 2 out. 2 in, 2 out. Come on, motherfucker. All right, to cut. Clockwise to cut. Clock to cut. What are we at? We're at 61756. All right, that's looking a lot better. I like that. The outside cut, and I don't know if you can see the inside cut. It's a heck of a lot better than that one. You can definitely see a difference. I like the edge too. It's not as deep. So, all right, folks. I got to be honest. It is the next day. And I will probably edit the previous segment to cut out much of my utter frustration and disappointment. You know, I'm not going to say it's user error, but you know, that's the easy explanation to why things weren't happening the way I preferred them to happen. And I'm going to call out 2 things. And I don't remember if the manual really emphasizes it in terms of steps. Let's see. It talks about the trimming procedure, meaning aligning this as well as your micro adjustment, your macro, your, what do they call this? The hard stop. The reason they call this the hard stop is because that's what this bumps. So you're setting your general depth with this, and then you're fine-tuning your depth with the 1/1000th turning, and you know, turning it out and turning it in. You got to find your groove there. So they talk about that, and then you know, that's that 1/1000th, and you know, messing with the shuttle for the shuttle to hit the hard stop. And then when it talks about, okay, so that's number 2, I guess. So that would mean number 1. So number 1 is setting up your cutter. And I'll show this up close on the screen, a digital version of it, because I found this not to be the case. You know, ensure the cutter blades are bottomed out on the pilot's shoulder, meaning touching the shoulder. So this was last night's bevy of experiments, and what I found was, you know, when I look at the, as I showed, when I look at the case or the marketing, and when you look at no chamfer, no deburr, no trim versus trim, chamfer, and deburr, you see the very light cut it has on the edge, both the inner and the outer edge. That's what I was having trouble achieving because I was following the directions. I put the cutter, which I will show you. I don't know if it'll be apparent. Might as well empty that again. I don't know if it'll be super apparent from what I'm going to show you. But to me, this was trial and error. Let's see, maybe this white block. I don't know if you'll be able to see how close the outside trim versus the inside. So I got to say, just as I was, you know, turning everything on, I was wondering to myself, based on how much you effed around with this thing last night and couldn't get it working, how much memory is on that card? How much storage is still left on that card? Well, we found out because I just had to go delete a bunch of files. So where I was going was, when you look at this, and I'm sure you're not going to be able to tell, but I do not have either one of these against the shoulder. And the reason I don't have either one of those against the shoulder of the Pilot is because when I followed the directions and did that, the amount of cutting, both inside and outside, was, I would call it, extreme. And these are my control groups. And when you look at the amount of trim, chamfer, and deburr on these, which were done on the Hornady Case Prep Center, this is what I was shooting for. Bad pun. So, you know, trial and error. And then I figured, all right, I'm going to start adjusting each one of these blades the way I want it to cut. So there's two main things to set. One is this is going to be my 5th one tonight. Doesn't include any of this from last night. This is number 5 from tonight. So I wanted to show you the before and the after. So before, we have a measurement of 6162. So I will put my number 5 in here. So the two things you want to do are set the blades. Pilot, you really can't fuck that up because it bottoms out. And then you need to set your stops, you know, where you're going to have this set to trim, essentially. And trying to do it all at once without, you know, being familiar enough with the tool, you know, newness factor, that kind of effed me up. So I had to break it into 2 different steps. One, the blade trimmings, meaning outside, inside, chamfer, deburr, and trim. And then, and I'm going to really risk it by putting all of these back in because I'm reasonably confident, now that I've said that I've jinxed it, I'm reasonably confident that I've got this set where I want it. And I kind of got tired of taking 2 out each time instead of just the 1. So we've got a couple of extras that we can trim some more to test. I've got my satisfied 1 through 4 that are kind of identical-ish to my control group settings. So again, number 5 that has nothing. And it's nice because I don't have to lock this down. And I will just do this until I stop hearing. And the only thing that could be, and because the camera's in the way, I'm not going to check that. All right, so there is my version of what I'm going to call satisfaction in terms of the inside case mouth and the outside, where the outside is a little bit more than this, but a lot less than on my previous video, last night's attempt. So the inside looks great. The outside, when that crimps, that should be fine. All right, that was test number 5, and that came in at 1.6 something. And we're at 1.58-ish, 1.59-ish. So I'd be willing to bet we could push that, because I'm going to guess it didn't hit Nice. And what was it? 158, 159. It grew. I love how you have to catch it. 158. You have to catch it a certain way. All right, so let's try control, or rather number 6. Number 6 is coming in at 159, 158. Let's mark this number 6. Number 6. 158. Looks nice. What do we say this is? 158. So it's taken off about 2 thousandths. 156. All right, last one. Then we'll call it done. And then I'll give you my thoughts. We'll call this number 7. What do we got for measurements on number 7? 157-ish. Number 7. I'm liking the way that turned out. Nice. And again, you can dial this into as little or as much as you want, but if you dial it into what the instructions say, was it 157? It couldn't have grown. 156. No, that's not possible. It can't grow. 156, 155-ish, 155 and some change. You need to dial in what you need to dial in terms of the blades. Both the blades and where you want the stops in terms of your depth. So my 2 cents would be, if you've got this dialed into where you want, you're never going to have a cartridge overall length of too much. Again, number 7 still looks nice. That's not possible. 5.5. 5.5. Okay. And since I've got one more piece of brass out here, I'm not going to label this 6. I'm going to call this 6-1. I'd probably do this standing up so that I would be standing over that as opposed to standing in back of it to see how it does. The other thing I would look into, if I was heavy into multiple, concerned about trimming, the only thing I'm concerned about trimming is 223. And again, you'll even see last night I was finding that shit wasn't even square, where now it is. So what did I say that was? 161. $158-ish. So, you know, I'm liking it now. I was not last night. I was pissed off last night. I was you know, angry at this thing. I did not like how it was doing its thing. And again, we could say user error, dumbassity, whatever. I just didn't like what was happening. So it was frustrating. And What I would recommend is, based on how much fine tuning I had to do with that trimmer, those two blades, I would get a trimmer. I would get that whole piece for each rifle bottleneck trimming brass I needed. I would not want to sit there and adjust this the way I did each time. That was, I'll call it beyond frustrating. It just, in fact, I'll pull out, because of the difference, and it's a design issue, because this is a three-way cutter, meaning cuts, chamfers, and deburrs. Let me get this out of the way. Because of the activity that does, and this is going to be interesting because it's camera's in the way, but you'll get the idea when I move it over. So when you look at the case prep, and I will adjust for 223. Yeah, this is a bit challenging to do with the camera. I'm doing one arm over the camera. Let me see if I can get that just about right. All right, I'm going to call that close enough for this discussion purpose. So now we have the depth set for 223. So if I were to grab one of these cases and put this in, cam lock it over, and hopefully when I should clear the camera. Then when I bring this down, notice how the cutter is wide enough that I don't have to worry about the cutter. Whereas on this one, I have to adjust the cutter. So this one, regardless of the size of the brass, the cutter stays the same, because this only does one thing. It cuts. It does not trim or chamfer. So, chamfer to burr. I would then have to put that into two other pieces to accomplish the same thing. So is this better than this? I'm going to say it's different. I like them for different reasons. This came at a time when I needed it, and because I primarily do 223, it was not an issue of frustration for adjustment. The only adjustment I had to do was I made a better pilot myself on the lathe, because the trimmer pilot that came with this was so big that when you resized your brass, it closed up the neck just enough that, you know, it would grip it and it was hard to do. So that made it much easier for me. So is this activity, doing that, any easier than doing that? It's about the same. It's nice that this is big, whereas this is a little tiny thing. But do you need some big giant thing right here? And it looks like I need to do a little polishing because of the weathering. But this is an awesome piece of equipment, in my opinion, that has the right place at the right time for the right task. But this required some setup too. You know, when you're dealing with, I like the tactile feel of this 1/1000th micrometer better than this thing. That's for sure. But again, once you have it set, you know, kind of set it and forget it, then you're not worrying about it. But this is a one-step process. You know, count the steps. Handling the brass. Once, cut, trim, chamfer, deburr, done. So technically, you're only touching the brass once, because if you do that, boom, 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 and then you do this, you don't touch the brass. So you're technically touching the brass one time. Done. This one, you touch the brass once, trim, touch the brass again, chamfer, deburr. So you're touching the brass twice, but you're doing 3 activities. Separate trim, separate chamfer, separate deburr. Showstopper? No. Never have to change the cutter pilot unless it gets old and you need a new one. This one, every time you change a caliber, you're gonna mess with the blades, both of them, and that could be tedious. Again, if you're using this with a bunch of mixed calibers, I would highly recommend getting a dedicated head and blades, and obviously you would have the pilot for each caliber, and that could probably be expensive, because I'm going to bet that that's probably with the what do they call that? I'm calling it the head. What do they call that piece? That piece is called number 11, and number 11 is called the cutter body. So I'm going to assume between the cutter body, the 3 screws, 33, 8 by 32 by a quarter, you can get those anywhere, so I wouldn't count that. But the blades, 34 and 35, ID cutter, inside diameter, outside diameter cutter, I bet between the 3 of those pieces, you're looking at least $100, at least. Times every caliber, that's where this one might be a better deal. Because you've got one cutter, 3 processes, trim, chamfer, deburr, 1 adjustable cutter / trimmer, chamfer, deburr, multiple pilots. So this one will accommodate everything this one will, but you're doing a lot of adjusting here. This one, no adjusting. Your only adjustment is going to be on your height. Same thing here. You're going to spend time readjusting this. And this doesn't have a memory setting, so every time you do this, you're going to be changing that setting where, if you had 3 calibers, you could put each of the calibers on here the way I've done 2, 2, 3 and match your lines up to get at least close enough. But, once you change the settings on this, you're trial and error to get back to whatever this is set for right now for 2, 2, 3. So, food for thought, things to think about. Later for now.